This podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that happens every day. These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Check your left phone for going to full evacuation on this side.
They're pulling them out.
911. Advise ready for camp.
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Chuck. This is Kevin. He was a guest on last time. Tom can't make it. He got hung up at a school deal for work. Because we all know he's the head protector of security for a school, so he has some issue there. But last time we had Kevin on. He was the ICAC Detective, the Internet Crimes Against Children. Works for a big task force, or works with a task force. And we got into all of his stories. How are you, Kevin?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Yeah, just living the dream like we always used to say at work.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back for part 2, man. I had a blast the first time, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the whole time I think we just talked about the crimes against children, it was such an eye-opening thing, and we kind of got into like how, you were put on this earth to do something, and kind of you're like, man, that's kind of like your calling, really. So last time we didn't really get into it because we spent so much time on that, but you were you've had a big career in law enforcement, patrol, and also SWAT.
Yeah. So I've been in law enforcement for 15 years, and hopefully I got another 15 or so ahead of me, but I've done a lot in that 15 years because it's just always been, one of those things I wanted to try a little bit of everything to just see what I really loved.
Right.
And so, I was on patrol for, just a few years, and made my way over to our SWAT team. I was on SWAT for 10 years. I did the ballistic. I was the ballistic shield operator for a while. So I was the first person through the door on all of our entries for a long time. Then became a team leader and got to experience leading some of the most hard-headed and difficult human beings on the planet, SWAT operators. I love them all to death, but it's like, I would rather be in charge of a kindergarten class some days, than try to manage those guys. But they're great, and it was a great time, great part of my career. And then, like you said, I moved over to ICAC, and I've been doing crimes against children for the last 5 years, and who knows what I'll be doing 5 years from now, if right. Something comes up. I said on the last episode that I'd like to work crimes against children for the rest of my career. But that's just kind of, how it is with agencies, new administrations come in and so hopefully they won't move me around, but you never know. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a few friends in law enforcement that where I worked, and they worked down at Gangs and Narcotics Division, and then all of a sudden we got a new regime change, new people came in, some people complained about some stuff, and the next thing you know, shit's getting shit canned, and guys who were there for 10, 12, 15 years, and they just never needed to go above patrol officer 2 or 3 and to make detectives. So they were in basically a massive unit or a division in Los Angeles for the Los Angeles Police Department called Gangs and Narcotics Division. And it's massive, right? And they have all these different facets to it of different investigations and units and things like that. Well, I had a friend who was there for 15 years, and he was just a patrol officer 3. So he's a training officer, and they kicked him out because they said you have to be a detective to be here, and he's like, but I've been here for 15 years, I know my job, I like all this stuff, like a detective doesn't need to do this stuff, and they kicked them all out because they got mad. And I was like, damn,
dude. And here's the deal, here's the fucked up thing, is that you will have administrators come in and they have no problem upending people's entire careers for no other reason than, well, my philosophy is different. So you're going here and you're going there and you're going here. And it's kind of madness, especially when you have somebody like your friend, 15 years in one role. That dude's a subject matter expert. Why in the hell now, would you want to move him out of there and replace him with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing yet? That's the guy that you want training the new guy, not
Exactly.
being replaced by him.
You know what's crazy is that they always pride themselves. I'm going to talk a little bit of shit right now on LAPD, but they always pride themselves as being modeling themselves after the United States Marine Corps. And me being a Marine, and so having served in that gun club, I look at them and I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, but there are so many things that you say that you modeled after the Marine Corps, just not the attitude.
Yeah.
Only their uniform, and that's it. And it's pieces of the uniform. And I'm like, but you left out the main thing is the attitude. And being a subject matter expert in the Marine Corps can actually hinder some things that you want to do in the Corps, like moving to a different unit or trying to, go over here and do that because they want to keep you because they only have so many subject matter experts in that field. And they said, if you're working for a private company, you're going to get paid more. Working for the Marine Corps, you're going to getting paid shit, and they're going to try to keep you there for as long as they can, But so like we're working LA. If you're like, oh, I model myself after that, and I'm like, nah, dude. If you did, you would want to keep this guy there for forever because he can teach new detectives, green detectives coming in who have maybe never worked this facet of investigations, and he can teach them, and then they become the expert and whatever, and they're his boss and yada yada whatever, because those dudes were doing hardcore investigations, like it was legit. And I have so many friends that are over there but like you said, new regime changes, things change, and it sucks. And so I feel for all those guys that are out there that they get screwed over like that, but hopefully that doesn't happen to you, because I mean there's not very many people that I know that can withstand the stuff that you guys do.
There's not many people that want to do it. I mean, the reality is that like there's a lot of dudes that are fantastic cops that are just they would take a bullet, for your average citizen. But you ask them to look at some of this stuff, child porn and they're like, fuck no. You can have my badge before you'll assign me to that. So the reality is that like when you move somebody out of this role, like you're gonna have a hard time filling it with a solid officer. You're going to get people that put in for it, but they're going to put in for it for the schedule and for, the clout, being able to put it on their resume. Like you're going to have a hard time finding somebody who is a legitimate go-getter to fill that role, because a lot of those guys are like, man, I don't want to look at that shit all day.
Exactly. And that was the biggest thing when because I wanted to go work crimes against persons or sex. Once I wanted to become a detective, it didn't work out, whatever. But I worked a lot with our sex detectives just because we were in a cigar club together. So every time he saw me, he'd be like, hey, you want to come on this follow-up with me? You want to come up with this investigation? I'm like, hell yeah, because I'm going to learn a lot. And, I can ask you the dumb questions that I'm not afraid to ask other people, or that I'm not afraid to ask you because you're my buddy. And we get to talk a lot of the times about that. And I would go to him for a lot of advice. And he would tell me like, oh, yeah, no, that's that site right there. That's like a sexual, like people go and get our victims on that site. And then he told me all the stuff about like Talking Tom and all this stuff, because he became our night watch detective and he was also our sex detective. It was crazy, but he's taught me so much stuff. And we got to talking one day and he goes, that's the hardest part of our job or my job that I don't like, is having to see all those videos and pictures.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and probably the worst, and I don't think that we talked about this on the last episode, because we tried to get through a bunch of stuff, and so I didn't really dig deep on a whole lot.
We got some time today.
Yeah. But I was in the middle of an ICAC investigation, and came across a video that was absolutely horrendous. And this is the point in my career where I realized I need to make sure my sound is off when I watch these videos, because the sound is what gets you. And I do remember talking about that in the last episode.
Yeah.
But this particular video was a video that it was in a basement somewhere. It looks like a freaking dungeon. And they had, and anybody who's listening, if you plug your ears if you don't want to hear graphic stuff about child abuse, because I'm going to describe the video. But it was she was probably maybe 6, 7 years old. And she was hanging from the ceiling by her feet. They had wrapped a chain around her ankles. She was hanging from the ceiling, and there was a woman wearing like a devil mask, and was literally torturing this little girl on video. And there was sex toys involved,
Ooh.
and I mean, dude, it was like it stuck with me for a long time. Now,
I bet.
what really bothered me about that video was trying to trace that video back,
Yeah.
to figure out where it came from. And it ended up coming from somewhere in fucking Mexico. So I didn't even have jurisdiction to try to figure out who created the video, who was distributing the video, because it came from a different country. So not only did I have to watch that damn video, but then I never got the satisfaction of even being able to investigate it. I had to close it because Mexico's not going to help me out, you know? So that's the type of shit that really sticks with you, is not necessarily what you see every day, but it's the cases that you couldn't make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, that little girl, who knows where she's at now? And I'll never know whether or not she was killed, whether or not she, you know what I mean? And so that's the type of stuff that sticks with you. And that's why I tell people, like, if you're going to do this line of work and you're not willing to like go talk to somebody and get this stuff off your chest, you need to find something else. Cause it's just not, you know, I still, when I'm out in public, if I hear like a pain cry from a child that's about that age range, immediately I have a recall of that video, because that's what stuck with me. It was a trigger. That's what stuck with me, was that little girl's cry. And so you got to be able to work through some of this stuff. And it's not as big of a trigger now because I've done what I needed to do to try to work through that, you know, with some therapy and stuff like that. But if you're not willing to admit that, like, man, that video kind of fucked me up, you know, if you have that tough guy syndrome, like you're going to be doing bottle therapy instead of, you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
But
and I think that's a lot of cops right there, is that tough guy persona, and because they don't want to ask for help, because they don't want to talk about it again. They don't want to think about it again. I think if I can just shut it off, not think about it, and push it out of my brain, and I don't remember it's there on a day-to-day basis, it's gone.
Yep.
And, you know, and then you start drinking a little bit, and then next thing you know, it's coming back, and you're like, oh fuck. And then you drink more because you want it to stop and you want it to go away. And it's like this vicious cycle. But the best and fastest way to get rid of it is talk to someone about it and understand why you're having it, understand the feelings, and go and let yourself feel the emotions.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's like a death by a million paper cuts, because that one video will bother you, right? And then like you'll rationalize it, and you'll be able to put it in the back of your mind, and it'll pop up every once in a while, but no big deal, right? And then, you know, you see another video, and then another one, and another one, and after 10 years of doing this, you have so many triggers that it's built up so much unresolved stress and anxiety over what you're seeing. But that's when you have the crazy crash outs, and the officers that are, you know, committing suicide or drinking themselves to a divorce and no relationship with their kids and all that shit. And it's death by a million paper cuts, and it's insidious because you can rationalize it like, oh man, it was only one video. Well, yeah, that was one video, but then what about the next one and the next one? And it all compounds, right? And so that's what's hard to explain to people, is it's not like one giant event that gives you PTSD. Sometimes it is. For some officers, it's like one traumatic event, right? One big a school shooting or something crazy like that. But for most of us, it's the small traumas every day that eventually compound into PTSD or stress reactions, and we don't recognize it as that because we've just gotten used to dealing with the small traumas, you know?
Exactly.
So
continue.
No, I was just going to say, so it's difficult to explain to people
Yeah.
You know, when people hear like, oh, you have, you know, PTSD or some type of stress reaction, they immediately think that like, oh man, you were in a gunfight, or you were, you know, overseas, you were in the Marines, you know, you were overseas and you
Right.
got hit with an IED, and you know,
Yeah.
but that's a small percentage of officers and soldiers and Marines that have PTSD. It's oftentimes it's the little shit every day that compounds.
Right.
So
Yeah, and in working for, in law enforcement, you're going to get that. You're going to, especially if you work patrol for a long period of time, especially in an agency where you take on all the investigations, and then once you've done everything that you can and you pass it off to the detectives, and then they take over, right? So I know there's some agencies out there that when you get certain things, you immediately call the detective and you're like, no, we're hands off. We just do X, Y, and Z. And then you go out to
mhm.
patrol. I don't know, maybe it's smaller agencies. I don't know. I've had a few coppers that were like that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because we investigated absolutely freaking everything till we couldn't. It was like relentless follow-up as like something that they kept telling us. Relentless follow-up. If you have the time, you're going to do it. Obviously, if you don't have the time, get all the info and all the details, put it down, send it off to the detectives, but you're doing the report, so like working and dealing with all that stuff. At first I was the same way. I was like, oh man, it is what it is. You see a dead body, you're like, that's part of the job. You go to the next call, you see a dead kid, that's part of the job. You go to the next thing, you get into a fight. Maybe it's, every fight is fight for your life, but it's a bad one. Push it out of your head, go to the next one. You see someone try to kill themselves, or you see someone kill themselves, in a graphic way. It's just another day on the job. You see a bad child abuse or a bad sexual assault, and you're like, I feel for you. I'm going to push that out. Just another day on the job. To the point where you get to a point where it's your glass is half, or it's full, right? You got half empty, half full, or full, right? And it's something what I learned in peer support. It's like, where are you on that level, and what are you doing to help yourself combat that cup? Because at some point in your career, you're going to be at I'm full and I can't take any more shit. And that's when you have to do a self-assessment and call it. Because if you don't, you're going to do a lot of detriment to yourself, your family, friends, everybody, up until losing your life. Right? It's
sure.
serious shit. Like, people don't understand, like, oh, I'm fucking big, bad, tough guy. You are no match for your brain. Mental illness or stuff that can trigger anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, you're fucking no match for it. Like, you can't handle it on your own. And I think a lot of coppers, they have that tough exterior. I know I did. And to the point where I got to a level where I was like, I fucking need help. And I ended up getting it. And I'm still on that road, and I'm still struggling with a lot of different things. But there are certain things, and I know coppers who've seen way worse shit, and I dealt with him, and I talked to him about a lot of that stuff. I mean, kids dead in a bathtub, like fucking Casey Anthony shit, just nasty, the scum of humanity. But you got to take that self, I guess, evaluation of everything that's gone on in your life and in your career. And maybe if you can do some preemptive measures and be proactive with it instead of reactive, and get the help, or it's like, your brain's just like your body. You work out your body. Why wouldn't you work out your brain? Why wouldn't you make it more resilient through exposure therapy, talk therapy, just regular therapy with a therapist? Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you go do all that? And it's all. And I'm not saying go to your department and do it, but there's so many people that you can go out there, people on the internet and things like that, where you can just talk to them. Yeah.
So
most insurances cover it.
We have a program. Well, my agency doesn't. We used to have a psychologist that was like kind of considered on staff, right? And like, they were willing to talk with you about stuff. And now, and Dr. Jennifer Prohaska. So here in the Kansas City metro area, she created a program called Tactical Longevity. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's, hey, let's do proactive work before there's an issue to create the ability to extend your career mentally, like psychologically, because you're prepared for these stressors and the psychological impact of the job. And she does a fantastic job of putting on this program, this training, teaching officers how to handle things before they happen, so that you don't end up like me and you after the fact, where you're like, damn, I need to talk to somebody. So if anybody's listening and your agency wants a program like that, you need to reach out to Dr. Prohaska. It's Tactical Longevity, and you can find it online. I have no ties with her at all. It's not, I just really like, I just really like what she's doing, and it would benefit a lot of agencies out there to have a program like that. So
yeah, so I think this is, and I'll share my screen real quick. But before I do that, I think a lot of this stuff happens like where coppers, the glass gets too full. But I feel like a lot of the times it's late in their career, because the older you get in law enforcement, the younger you are, the more limber your body is, the less likely you are to get hurt or injured. And the older you get, the more likely you are to get hurt or injured, because if you're sitting in a shop all day, or a patrol car, whatever you guys call them, out there, you guys are listening, and coppers and stuff, you're sitting in it for, let's say, the first 6 hours of your shift. It's early in the morning. You haven't stretched. Why would you stretch? You're eating, you're doing all these things, you're getting out, you're walking up to a couple calls, you're doing whatever, you're sitting back in your squad or your shop or whatever you call it. And next thing you know, you have a backup or a help call come out for one of your partners, or you see some dude just rob some lady in broad daylight. Next thing you know, foot pursuit's on. And you're out of your car and you're running, and then you tear your Achilles, you tear your hamstring, you tear your ACL, your MCL, your PCL, whatever the fuck, you tear it because you're older, you're not limber anymore, you haven't stretched, and you've been sitting in a seated position for the last 4 to 6 hours, and your muscles are kind of starting to atrophy because they're getting tight. And you go to run and you tear some shit, and then you're stuck at home for an extended period of time getting surgery or whatever, or a sprain, or it's like anywhere from 3 to 6 months, right? You're at home. But this whole time you were staying busy, right, on the job, and there was things keeping your mind occupied. But when you get injured and you're older and you don't have anything else to occupy your mind but time and watching the fucking paint dry on your walls or watching the same shit on TV, that's when the stuff that you thought you pushed out is coming back. And I think that's where a lot of officers are getting or having issues is, they have an extended period of time off, they have time to think, and then all of a sudden shit starts flooding back that they thought they got rid of. And I mean, when that shit hits you, it's like a wave. It's like a tidal wave. It's not like each piece that you put in there was very small. Okay, it's very small, and then it built up, and that's this massive snowball. It's coming smacking you right in the face, and it hurts and it sucks. But I could be completely off. But this is Tactical Longevity, I believe. Yeah, let me just share my screen real quick. I'll show.
Yeah, so it should be Jennifer Prohaska, and she has no idea that I was going to talk about her today. So she'll put, yep, that's the program. So right she'll there. Probably, I'll have to let her know that I at least mentioned her program. But it's great. She's incredibly personable, and the only thing she does her entire practice is first responders, and so she does first responder psych evals for the hiring process. She does personal one-on-one therapy type stuff. She does after traumatic events. She'll do debriefs, and so she's great. But I kind of going along with our conversation, it just kind of popped into my head that like, oh, that would be a great resource for people. So look her up, out to her. She's very active on LinkedIn, so that's a good place to find her.
And her phone number is on her Facebook is 913-652-6668. Website is Tactical, TACTICALLONGEVITY.com. So it's tacticallongevity.com, or Insight publicsafety.com. As you can see it on the screen. So if you're not watching, go watch it, because then you can see all this stuff and you don't have to listen to me speak it. But yeah, I mean, follow her. If you go to that website, like I just shared, you can see her LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. If you just go all the way down to the bottom, or go to the contact page, and if you want to talk to her, send a message, there you go. But yeah, so all the stuff that you dealt with in crimes against or you are dealing with, and the ICAC stuff, the crimes against children, You were in SWAT prior. Did anything in SWAT or patrol ever affect you like the stuff that you saw, like the same way that you saw it in ICAC or are currently seeing in ICAC?
So
I know they're two totally different things, but
no. You're right though. So I would say that whether I was responding on patrol or doing some type of SWAT call out or what I'm doing now, the things that affected me the most were the things that involved children. That was just,
yeah.
I remember specifically my very first week of patrol training. We got a call for somebody who had been hit by a train. And so we drive out there, the train is stopped, obviously. And the conductor or the driver, do they call them conductors anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, they do. I'm pretty sure.
So
yeah.
he's standing outside of the train on the side of the road, like, oh my God, I just killed someone. And so we show up and, we're investigating it. We're like, dude, like, where's the body? What's it? And the driver tells us, you guys need to watch the camera. They have cameras on the front of the trains now because so many people get hit by trains. The railroads they're putting cameras on the front of the train so that they can avoid liability, and they can say that, like, no, this was intentional, right? Like they did, So I go and I watch this video, and the conductor tells me, he's like, this dude laid down on the tracks, and I watched him. He looked up at me and he smiled and he waved at me as the train was coming, and it hit him and it killed him. And I remember kind of being like, oh, okay, dude, like, sure. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the young guy that's like, whatever, bro. Like, yeah, that's a bullshit story. So
until you see it, and you're like,
yeah. So then I watched this video, and I'm like, I'll be damned. He did wave at the conductor, which was creepy as hell. So then we go and I start looking, because obviously that type of an impact, like the body could be anywhere. So I find this body, and the train had cut the body from here across the chest. Okay. So you can picture like a headless and one arm body laying there. Yeah. So I'm like, at that point I saw the body, and I was like, man, this doesn't look like a grown ass man. Like this is a smaller body. Right. And that's when I realized, that's when I realized, like, this is a kid. Mm-hmm. So I go and I'm looking around the train, because at this point, I'm like, what? Now I got to find the head. So,
oh fuck yeah,
and it's 3:00 in the morning. It's dark.
You can't see shit. It doesn't look like I'll tell you right now from personal experience, when you're looking for a body parts at night, where there's dirt and blood is involved, it does not resemble human anything.
No. And that's a wild part is I always tell people, I'm like, when you come across a real dead body, it looks like a Hollywood prop.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't look real. So anyway, long story short, I'm looking around, and I look underneath the train, and the head is stuck up underneath the train, and I make eye contact.
Oh,
and
gosh.
The arm is still dangling there. And it looks like, dude, I swear, and it looks like it's kind of waving at me, right? And I'm, so you keep in mind, I'm a new patrol officer, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck did I do signing up for this?
Right.
So we go back and we locate the kid's car, and inside the car, he's got stacks and stacks of notebooks, and inside these notebooks, it's the same demonic drawing on every page of these notebooks.
Oh, gosh.
So that's when I was like, it all makes sense, and you and I talked about this last time too. Yeah. The spiritual aspect of evil, like evil is is a real thing.
Absolutely.
And so whatever this kid was into, he got messed up in the head somehow. And like, you could just tell these drawings and like the little things he wrote all over the place. Like it was severe, like mental illness, probably mixed with like some pretty evil shit.
Yeah.
And then that explained laying on the tracks and smiling and waving as you're getting ready to get hit by a train. Like normal people
Yeah.
don't do that. But it
No.
turned out to be 16-year-old kid. And we found his cell phone. And mom kept calling and calling and calling and calling because she didn't know where he was. And I ended up answering and having to explain the situation to her. And so that was one that stuck with me, mostly because um, I'm devoutly Catholic. And so the
Oh yeah, that's
idea,
kind of messed. Yeah.
the idea of like the demonic, like
Mm.
it stuck with me that like, dude, this shit
Mm.
is real.
Yeah.
And then the fact that it was a kid, it was like, man, no kid should be in a place mentally where they feel like, they need to kill themselves.
Right. Like,
So
I mean,
that
like,
one stuck with me.
yeah, when I was a kid, like all I wanted to think about was skateboarding, my girlfriend, getting
Girls,
it
yeah,
in,
yeah,
video games, football, parties. Like I never had any stress as a kid. I was like, what dumb shit are we gonna get into today? And even
yep,
when you got into the dumb stuff, the only time I ever had any type of like anxiety was when I was like, I'm in trouble and I got
yes,
caught. And you know what I mean? But the whole time I was doing it, no care in the world. I was like, I'm untouchable. I'm not gonna get like I'd never had that. Like there was never an issue.
yep,
And then I started working and I started seeing all these young children while I was on the job that had issues mentally. And what I discovered, now I don't know if it was, and I was going to ask this question, I don't know if this was the case for that kid, because demonic possession is completely different than this. But from all the shit that I saw, a lot of the times kids were being prescribed medications, and
oh
children's
yeah,
brains when they're young, they can start getting prescribed fucking antipsychotics, anti-anxiety medications, antidepressives, antidepressants. And when you're 12 years old, 9 years old, and you're getting prescribed all this crazy shit,
yeah,
I was seeing stacks of pills for these kids who are like 12, 14, 13, 16 years old. And they're on some crazy shit, right? Because one pill will interact with their brain, cause them to do different things. Then they'll counteract that behavior with another pill. And then the
yeah,
behavior that comes from that pill, they counteract with another pill. Next thing you know, this kid's on like 3 or 4 fucking pills, and their brain's not even fully developed. You know what I
no,
mean? So the chemicals
no.
imbalance in their brain with all the medication is causing them to go all fucking haywire. Now, for this particular kid that you were involved, did you get to figure that out? Did you get to figure out, like, was he on meds or anything like that, or was he just
No.
fucked up?
So this was during like what you were describing before of you show up, you take the basic information, then you let detectives look at it.
Right.
This was kind of during a time in our agency where it was like patrol officers handle calls, detectives handle investigations.
Yeah.
That's it. No crossover. So unfortunately I didn't get to do much of the follow-up. A detective showed up and did, everything else after that. And then I just went on to the next call, and I never thought to ask because I got busy doing the next thing and the next thing,
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, I remember when I was growing up, and I'm sure it was the same for you, um, kids, especially boys that, had problems focusing or had problems with behavioral issues. Like you put them in football pads, or
Yeah.
you send them outside with a pocket knife and a fishing pole, and you're like, hey, go out in the woods and find a pond to fish in.
Yeah.
Now, dude, it's like the second a child can't sit in a classroom for 8 straight hours and pay attention, the second that they can't do that, it's like, oh, it's ADHD, here's a bunch of meds, and here's a bunch.
Yeah.
And I believe it. I believe it's screwing with their head. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
a psychologist. I'm not a pharmacist. I don't know, the ins and outs of these medications, but I
Oh,
think it
they're
would be,
bad, dude.
I think it would be crazy to ignore you know, the link between
Mhm.
these mental health drugs and the negative side effects that
Oh,
people
yeah.
see. And another thing too is back when we were kids, the internet was not really a thing. And now,
No, there was no internet growing up, and then all of a sudden there was dial-up and IM.
yeah,
But you were
yeah,
still going and getting your dirty stuff, your smut magazines from your buddy on the bus who's a senior, and he's
yep,
selling it to you for
yep.
a whole like $10, your whole
Or
lunch money for the week.
you were going down to the family video, and you were sneaking behind the curtain where they keep
Yeah,
the adult stuff, you know.
yeah,
Um,
just to look at
but
the box.
the internet, dude, the internet is creating an epidemic of mental health problems in our youth because a child can go on the internet and all they see is all of the perfect people out there who only post the perfect aspects of their life, and it causes children to believe that that is what they're supposed to aim for, and it's impossible to meet what all these people put on social media because it's all fake. And so then
Right.
these kids start developing these self-esteem issues or these problems that, and then they get cyberbullied, and then
Yeah.
and it's just
They don't know how to
then
handle
they
it.
end up committing suicide. And it's
Yeah.
just
I've seen a lot of
the
that lately.
internet's great in some aspects, but it has by far it's the biggest catalyst for mental health problems in our youth is the freaking internet.
Brother, I've been saying the same thing, and I tell my wife all the time, I don't want the kids to have a fucking tablet. No, they do.
Mhm.
I don't want them on this shit. I went so far as to ban one of my kids from tablets altogether. I'm like, you're not allowed on it because the way that makes you act, I do not like. And
For
if you
sure.
watching that is going to cause that reaction, absolutely not. The other one does okay. I limit the time, 2 hours a day. That's it. Like I don't want, and I don't allow them to go on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, none of that shit until they're older and they're 16, because then you kind of, I think we talked about this last time. You kind of have to start ushering them into it because you don't want them to be 18 years old, 17 years old, going out into the world, right? Because whenever you
never
graduate college,
experiencing anything.
exactly. And then it's all this shit right in your face, and then you're a legal adult, and then you're like, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm gonna go to my GP, and your GP is gonna prescribe you all these freaking drugs, and next thing you know, your brain's not fully developed, and you're fucking suicidal and crazy. Like I don't want that because I've seen so much of it, and I have ADHD. My son has ADHD. My kids are gonna have ADHD. My daughter has it, but she's not on meds because she doesn't need to be because has a different type. Mine, I was on meds when I was a kid. That shit fucked me up. And I had to hop off, and I can't take medication for that. I have to take natural stuff because the stuff that the reactions it was giving me was so bad. So when my son had to hop on it, right? And I sent him outside all the time. I'm like, you need to go outside, you need to play, you need to burn this energy off. But nowadays with these kids, they're all inside playing video games or on tablets. So there is no more playing outside. If he's going to go play outside, he's going to have to play by himself or with his young sisters. And at some point he wants to come inside and just relax and whatever. And I'm like, dude, like this sucks. Like you're getting robbed of a childhood. Yes. When I was younger, everybody was out in the streets. My buddies lived on the cul-de-sac, and every house had all the kids. There was fights in the street. It was chaos. There was dumb shit going on, but we were all burning our energy. And by the time we came inside, we were calm, maybe a little rowdy at some point because you get that burst of energy. Right. You're going to bed at a reasonable time, and you weren't all fucked up in the head.
Yeah. So my wife actually sent me something that was incredibly profound to what you and I are just talking about. And I'm just going to read it because it made a ton of sense to me. But it says, I find myself worrying most that when we hand our children phones, we steal their boredom from them. As a result, we are raising a generation of writers who will never start writing, artists who will never start doodling, chefs who will never make a mess in the kitchen, athletes who will never kick a ball against a wall, musicians who will never pick up their aunt's guitar and start strumming. Mm-hmm. And that, like, I was like, damn, that's how we created, like, the people who are great at things today. They're great at those things because they were bored as kids and they found an interest, and then it became what they did all the time. And now they're experts at it. Kids today, they're missing those bored moments that give them access to, like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. oh, this sounds fun. I'm going to start doodling, right? And then now
Right.
the next thing you know, you have an amazing artist on your hands, right? But if
Yeah.
that kid never starts doodling because he's never bored, because he always has a fucking screen in front of him, um,
Yeah.
like what are we doing to our kids? It seems harmless, right? But
Uh-huh.
really, we're preventing them from experiencing these potential interests that could turn into the thing
A
that
co-
they're great at.
Right. It could
You
be
know,
a career. I mean,
yeah,
we trade that in for a cheap dopamine fix for 30-second video or a 10-second video, and you get that cheap dopamine fix, that fast fix.
yep,
Whereas if they were doodling, the dopamine fix came at the end when they completed the project that they were working on, and then they were proud
yes,
that they completed on it, and then they just spent the last 2 hours working on this, and they see it and they're like, that's fucking cool. And then they
yeah,
show everybody and they're super pumped about it, like, look at this. And you're like, that's pretty good, dude. Or that's pretty good, girl. I mean, I
yeah,
call my kids dudes. It's dude, it's unisex for me.
yep, I
And
agree.
so I'm like, that's awesome. And they get to do that. The crazy thing was is that when we took the tablet away from my daughter, she got into cooking, and now she sits there and watches me cook because she doesn't have a tablet, so I make her board, and she'll just sit there and be like, oh, dad's cooking, I'm gonna go watch. And she gets real close, and I'm gonna have to back her up because she wants to see absolutely everything that's going on. And I'm like, dude, you're gonna be really good at this. And if, as long as I, thinking the same thing, keep you bored, keep you intrigued in this, because the moment I give you a screen, you're done.
Yep,
Exactly. Everything's turned off. Your creativity is turned off.
yep,
There's just certain things, like when I was younger, I would draw. I loved art because I didn't have a screen, because I didn't have this. And my dad would ground me a lot. So I didn't have anything. And I hated reading. So I would just look at pieces of art or, things outside, and I would just draw it. And I would spend
yep,
hours doing that. And I became a pretty decent artist. And then I got older and I got into other things that channeled that same thing. And then I got into football, and that
yeah,
just fixed a lot of stuff. And I just wanted to hit people. And, I agree. Like that we're robbing our kids of their creativity because we want them to be quiet
yeah,
and behave.
yep. And a lot of times it's because the adults want to sit on their fucking phone. So they don't want
Yeah.
to be bothered because they want their own little dopamine fix. And
I'm
so then
guilty
you
of that
have,
sometimes.
dude, for sure.
Fuck, yeah.
100%. I am not always a great example for my kids. I'll tell
No.
them, well, I'm sitting here looking at my phone and I'm like, you guys are on screens too much. Right.
Yeah.
And so it sucks because we have to remind ourselves too that like they're going to do what we do, not what we say. And so,
Right.
um, you can tell them till you're blue in the face that screens are not good, in overabundance, right? They're fine, if they're in moderation. But if you're sitting there looking at it all night long, they're thinking like, dude, this is bullshit.
Mhm.
And they're going to try to figure out a way to do their own thing. So,
Yeah.
um, but I see that with a
Agree.
lot of my victims in my cases
Mhm.
is it's kids who spend their entire lives on the internet.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's how they end up being victimized.
Mhm.
Um, and so they lose the ability to connect with people one-on-one or personally, right? They can't make eye contact,
Yeah.
they can't carry a conversation, they can't and so that's a big thing for me with my kids is like you guys are going to know how to look an adult in the eyes, shake a man's hand, and carry on a conversation in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you will be wildly successful in this world because very few people can do that anymore.
Funny.
It's as simple as that. If you
Yeah.
the bare
It,
minimum,
it's crazy that is like a form of judgment now, is like how well you shake a hand, because back in the day, men would shake hands. Everyone shook a firm handshake, and if you didn't, you weren't looked at the same as everyone else. But now it's common to get that dead fish hand and whatever, and you're just like your command presence or your personal presence, just it's lacking. It's
it is.
weak. It's
It
childish.
is.
I don't know. I went so far as, and I didn't even think about it one day, and I went to my son's baseball game, and I came up to one of the coaches there and I shook his hand and I was like, "What's up, brother?" And I shook his hand. He looked at me and he goes, "That was a really good handshake." And I was like, "Thanks." Fucking weird thing to say. And he was like, "You would be surprised on how many people can't shake a fucking hand." And then we started talking about this same thing that you just mentioned.
Yep. It's you either get the dude who does like the dead fish, or you get that motherfucker who's like squeezes super quick so you don't even get your hand all the way in there. So then he squeezes your fingers, and then you're like, dude, let's do that over again because I have a better handshake than that. And you squeeze too quick, and then it's awkward, and then it's like, there's always that fucking guy, and then he's like, oh yeah, and then he feels like he won the handshake battle,
Oh, dude, with people like that, so I have a little bit of a funny bone in me, and if I get squeezed like that and the guy immediately comes up and just fucks my hand, and I'm sitting there like this, and I'm like, ooh, that was good, and he's like, oh shit, and I'm like, you could have waited till I linked up with you, but you destroyed my hand. I make him feel stupid for a little bit, and then it opens up. It's like a good icebreaker, and then we kind of joke about it. And I was like, "You want to redo that? You want to, whatever?" And then sometimes I'll even fuck with people, and I'll just shake their hand when they do that, and then I'll do the little inside where you do this, and you scratch the inside of the finger. Like, what the fuck? And I'm like, "Hey, whatever, But yeah, a firm handshake. When you, especially like, I hate going into interviews when they're like, oh, let's do it over the computer. I'm like, fuck you. I want to see you in person. I want you to see how I look. I want you to see what I look like, because I'm not a soup sandwich, and I want to shake your fucking hand. I want to talk to you in person. And I think it's being a detriment to society or in general is when you do like these interviews and stuff like that. Imagine going for a detective spot or a sergeant spot, and you have to do an oral interview, and they're doing it over a webcam with only audio only, and you can't show them how you look, how you're presented, how you shake a hand, how you do anything, because command presence is everything, especially in law enforcement, any type of investigation or any type of management role, or a role where you have to command respect. If you show up, you look squared away, and you look put together, you have a good command presence, and you shake a firm hand, you have a firm handshake, and you speak direct and straight to the point. You look someone in their eyes when you're speaking to them. That commands respect, and people are like, "Oh, I'm going to fucking listen."
Yeah.
And
that's what I was just going to say is if you stand up. So when I was part of our training division too. So I was a full-time training officer for a while, and when I first started getting up in front of people who outranked me or officers who had been around for longer than me, I was like, oh man, these fucking guys, like they know more than me. So like, they're not going to listen to me. And then I was nervous. But what I started to realize was that like, if I got up there and I had a command presence and I walked and talked like I knew exactly what the fuck I was talking about, you could just see that like people they'll believe anything you fucking say because you look like you know what you're talking about. And that stuck with me. And so that's like, anytime I'm in a situation where I find myself like nervous because of an interaction or something that I'm about to have, I always just tell myself, I'm like, dude, he doesn't know that you have no fucking idea what you're doing.
Exactly.
So act like you do,
Say it from the fucking chest, look good, look sharp. I used to see that shit all the time. Command presence is one of the things they teach you in law enforcement. And I'm sure you got taught the same shit. If you look good, your dress is squared away. We're not talking about a dress, people. We're talking about your dress uniform or whatever you're wearing for the day. Your shit is wired tight. Yeah, exactly. Your boots are shined, your shirt's tucked in, you have shirt stays on, or any type of thing that keeps from you looking like a soup sandwich. You look squared away, you have a squared away face, you have a squared away haircut. Everything is fucking tight. If you have to iron your stuff, everything is squared up, and it's ironed properly, it's pressed properly. It's got all the epaulets right. Everything is good. There's no Irish pennants on it. You don't look like shit. And your stuff is squared the fuck away, and you come up and you talk to someone out in the field, they're going to fucking listen, especially if you have solid command presence. You're not an asshole, but you're firm. Whereas the same thing, I used to see this, I had a couple of training officers and people that had been on longer, and they just stopped giving a fuck on how they looked. And I get it. I saw the same thing in the Marine Corps. There were certain dudes, you call them gunny rolls. They just don't give a fuck. Senior lances that have been NJP'd a fuck ton of times. They don't give a fuck. They're like, I'm just going to wear pajamas to work, basically. I don't care. And I get that. But then you have someone who's training other people or who are trying to command a presence out there with a suspect or a victim.
Yep.
I would see it so often. People who had way more experience than me, they would look like a soup sandwich, and they would get into fights more frequently. They wouldn't get information, and victims wouldn't talk to them. And then you would have someone who would be younger. I would see it sometimes, and I would take over, because if I saw them getting run over, I would come up and I would talk to the person. My shit was squared away, fucking tight, muscles showing, whatever. And even if you don't have muscles, make it look like you have muscles. Pull your shirt sleeves in, tighten that shit up. Don't look like a fucking umbrella. Keep your shit tapered down. Spend the extra money and go to the cleaners and get it tapered down. And all my stuff would be tucked in, boots would be shined, belt would be shined, and I would talk to the people, and I would get a better command or a better respect or a better response than guys who had more time on but look like shit.
Yep. Well,
You know
and that's my big thing about fitness is that, like, it's not just the actual ability to chase someone or to last in a fight.
Mhm.
It's looking like you can chase someone or last in a fight, because when these motherfuckers who are looking for an easy target see you get out of the car, they're going to be
Mhm.
like, damn, I'm going to wait for the next opportunity. Right. Like, and,
Exactly.
and these officers that are like, well, you know, I don't have to, like, why do I need to be able to run a mile? It's not like I
Mhm.
ever have to do a foot chase that doesn't last a mile, blah, blah, blah. I'll just get in my car and drive. It's not about that. It's about your
Right.
presence. And, like, you won't have to get in your car and chase someone,
Mhm.
because they'll look at you and be like, damn, I'm not going to outrun that guy,
Yeah.
So it's all about the command presence, and having a body that is physically fit is going to prevent more fights and more
Yeah.
foot chases and more issues than anything else, because these
Yeah.
dudes are going to be like, he's not the one, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And I've seen more out of shape, overweight officers get involved in shit, right? Than the guys who are fit and looking sharp, right?
yep,
And I learned this early on. I mean, it was preached to us in the academy, it was preached to me in the Marine Corps. You look good, stay sharp, you get less shit, right? Don't look like a soup sandwich. Plus, I got it drilled into me in the Marine Corps. Don't look like a piece of shit, right? Don't be a
yep,
shit bag. So I was like, all right, this is how you have to look. And plus, I respect the badge, I respect the law, I respect the uniform, and I feel good wearing it. So if you look good, you feel good, type of thing. And
yep,
I was working in the southern part of Los Angeles, and we're rolling up on some rolling 40s, and there was another officer already there, and it was a fucking shit show already. And we had some suspects that we had to detain, and I think it was 3 of them. And I had that door pop in the Crown Vic, popped out as the car was still rolling, drew down. I was like, get the fuck on the wall now. And we both popped out. The shit was like, and we all got out. These dudes popped up. One of them tried to run. The other 2 stayed put, and we caught the other one. And they all stopped, and we hooked them up, and yada yada. It was all said and done. And then you change gears, and you're just like shooting the shit, because that's how you get info, right? And I'm just shooting shit. I'm talking to these dudes, and I was like, hey bro, like, you mind me asking? I was like looking at everybody else like, why the fuck didn't you guys run? And the one dude's like, you look like you were gonna catch me and beat the fuck out of me. I didn't want
yep,
to get into a fight today, and I didn't go
yep,
want to get my ass beat.
yep,
And you look like you can beat my ass, not gonna lie. And I was like, respect, dude, I get it. And I was like, yeah,
yep,
I would have fucked you up, and I would have caught you. I was like,
for
you have
sure.
no idea. I was
And
ready.
and the cool thing is that there's also the dudes on the flip side
Mhm.
that they look good, right? They look great. They're fucking in great shape, but
Yeah.
they don't know how to do what you just said, where now that the danger is gone, now you can fucking dial it back and you can shoot the
Yeah.
shit. You can be a normal dude. And there's some dudes at the other end of the spectrum that they are so fucking aggressive that they do cause fights and problems because they don't know when to dial it back. And
Yeah.
so it's funny because there's always like that balancing act where you show up and you're like, like you said, like, get on the fucking ground, get on the fucking wall, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, like, it's time to fucking holster up and be like, hey,
Yeah.
bro, why don't you take a seat so you're not having to stand? It's fucking hot out here, man, blah, blah, blah. And then you try to build rapport. And it's funny how many people can't do that either. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, there's officers that just don't know how to build rapport. Everybody's a fucking shitbag all the time, you know.
No, man. They're humans just like us, bro. You gotta be like, all right, man, it's cool. Like,
Yeah,
I won, you lost. It's a game. We call it how it is, and you shoot the shit with them because the next time they see you, they know that you mean business, but you're going to be cool. So
but you're
even
also
if they
cool
run
about it.
from you, even if they run from you, when you catch them, they're less likely to fight. And if
Oh,
they
sure.
fight and you fuck them up one time, the next time they see you, they ain't running. They're
Yep.
just going to
You're
stop.
like, damn, Chuck, you got me that last time, man.
Yeah.
You
You
know?
thump them up one time, you know, it
And
changes a
that's
lot.
so it's funny because when I interview these chomos, I've done hundreds of these interviews, and um, when you listen to my interviews with these guys, you're like, dude, this fucking guy, it's like he wants to be this chomo's best friend. Like, dude, I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know, hey, look, man, I I don't think you're a monster, bro. I think you made a silly decision. And, you know, honestly, that fucking 14-year-old girl you were chatting with, bro, the way she was dressed, I mean, she looked way too old to be wearing that. And then they start being like, "Oh, yes, I know, right?" And then that opens up. I mean, they will fucking tell you everything if you pretend like,
Exactly.
you know, hey man, and
Oh
then
my gosh.
afterwards I walk out and I feel fucking dirty because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I had to pretend like I fucking like that
Oh,
dude.
I know what you're talking about, but it was something that was brought up to me like by I think it was a sex detective, and he was like, you know, you can lie to them, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, in a sense that you can fake the way that you are to
Yeah,
build a rapport to get info. You don't you exactly the way you said it, that's exactly how he basically framed it. And you talk to someone, especially in sex, because you it's so hard to get convictions in sex that you have to sometimes play a fucking part
for
and
sure.
talk to these people and let them feel comfortable, because the moment they feel comfortable, they just let shit rip. And it's, you know, sometimes it's spontaneous statements, sometimes it's they just will answer anything that you say because they
Yeah.
think that you guys are boys now because you both think the same way. In real reality, you don't. It couldn't be farther from the truth. You're using a tactic.
Yes, yes. And I am sitting there thinking in the back of my mind of all the different ways that I want to kill this motherfucker. But what I'm saying is, dude, I mean, she looked older than 13, man. Like I can totally see how you would have maybe been like, you know, damn, she's flirting with me, you know, and you go down that road with them, and then they start admitting shit because they feel like this guy this guy understands why I did what I did, and they
Yeah.
rationalize it in their own head, you know. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a tactic, and it's all bullshit. But they a lot of times they're because these dudes are fucking weird, right? Like
Yeah.
these are weird dudes.
Absolutely.
And so that, well, I mean, not all of them. Some of them come off as normal, but they they know that what they did is fucked up, and they're trying to rationalize it in their head. So when you give them a little bit of rope to rationalize it vocally, they will take that and they will run with it. And, you know, you give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves. And it's funny when it happens, because as soon as it happens, then my demeanor changes. And I'm like, all right, cool, bro. So what you're telling me is you raped a fucking 13-year-old girl. And then like their whole, then it's like, oh shit, you know, and
Yep.
it's always
I
funny to
fucked up.
see that moment in the interview. Um,
Yeah,
but
because you can
anyway,
only hide it for so long. You're just like, I
yeah,
just want to hook this dude up.
yeah,
You know, it and it's man, yeah, I mean, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is a tactic that is not easily learned. And
yeah,
I would try to teach that to my probationary officers when I would work with them in my boots. And I'm like, dude, when you're investigating people, when you're interviewing them, you got to build a rapport. They're like, how do I do that? And I would explain the exact. I'm like, lie to them, dude. They're like, I can't lie. I'm like, yeah, you can. And
you
it's not
can.
lying in the sense that you are doing X, Y, and Z, and you're lying about all of it, like lying about Miranda or whatever,
Yeah,
this and that.
yeah,
No, you're lying about who you are. and your likes and dislikes and whatever. I used to get narco suspects to flip all the time, and I would get buyers, I would get sellers, I would get all this shit. And a lot of times I'd bribe them. You know, I'd be like, not in the sense where like I'm giving them money, but I'm like, hey dude, like I'll see if I can talk to the attorney and the district attorney's office, get you a deal maybe. And I don't know, man, like I can see, or maybe, I'll book this as just evidence. Like, oh yeah. And well, I would never do that. I would be like, nah, dude. And I'm like, oh, I'll give you an extra phone call, or I'll help you write it down. Nah, dude. Like, I would take it by the letter of the law every fucking time. But I would try to build a rapport. Once I got that information, we're fucking cool. And if I knew that, and there's no harm in, if you know someone's going to clam up and immediately going to invoke their rights, and you're not a seasoned detective or an investigator, and you know it's going that way, don't even question them. You don't even need to read them their Miranda rights. Fucking book them on the open charge, leave it, let the seasoned pro do it, and they can come in and they can do all that stuff, because once they have a chance to simmer and relax and calm down, they're going to be less likely to invoke that Miranda. And if you come in right at the beginning all hot and they're pissed off at you and you read them their rights, you're like, give me a lawyer. Yeah. You're fucked. Yeah. And that investigator's fucked. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and a lot of times too, people don't realize that like we can, like I can tell these guys, I'll sit down with them and I'll be like, look, dude, I have every fucking message that you have sent over the last year printed off and sitting on my desk right now. So there is nothing that you can tell me that is going to convince me that you didn't send these fucking messages. I have them all. And then they believe that. I don't have shit. The victim wouldn't give me this. She wouldn't give me her phone. I don't have his fucking phone. I don't have shit. But then he's like, all right, okay, yeah, let's talk. And then we start talking about these messages that he thinks I have that I don't even have.
Right.
And that's perfectly acceptable, because this is like you said it earlier, this is a fucking game. Like, and as long as I don't violate your rights, I can play games with you right back,
Exactly.
People don't realize that. So
it's a game of chess, not checkers.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, damn, dude, like, again, we didn't get into your SWAT stuff. As we're getting ready to close out, I'm getting ready to do the dedication and read my notes and everything at the end. But you were in SWAT for 10 years. That's a long time. And you've been, and I feel like, how long have you been in ICAC?
5 years.
5 years. I feel like there has been so much more trauma in ICAC than there has probably ever 100%. Been in your time in fucking SWAT.
Well, honestly, I think it's just because it involves kids. Because I can tell you SWAT stories about, making entry into a room and fucking watching a dude with a shotgun in his mouth look me right in the fucking eyes and pull the trigger. And crazy shit like that. That just didn't bother me that much because it didn't involve a child. I have a soft spot for kids. And so I think that's really a lot of it is like, there's probably just as much fucked up shit that happened on SWAT and patrol. But it just didn't stick with me because it didn't have that emotional impact of a victimized child, But the SWAT stuff was, man, that was just a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fun.
How was it going from making dynamic entries in SWAT to going to ICAC at the very beginning? Like, how was that transition? I bet it must have been difficult.
It was difficult, but I was actually lucky because I was able to stay on our team as a team leader in a part-time capacity while I was in ICAC for a couple of years. And so I was able to kind of do both, which was cool. Because I'd spend most of my time in my office at my desk doing reports and doing the detective thing. But then every once in a while, I got a chance to go out and put all my gear back on and kick a door in and do my thing. And so it was kind of the best of both worlds type of a thing. And then, when I decided it was time to turn my SWAT stuff in, it was a hard decision, but like looking back on it, like it was absolutely the right decision. Like I didn't love it anymore. And that's how I knew that like it was time for me to be done. Because if you start to not love it, then forcing yourself to continue to do it, you're just going to put yourself and other people in danger because you're not going to be at your best. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I just knew that it was time. And there wasn't really any one incident that made me realize it was time. It was just like one day we were doing our PT test. And for 10 years, I always finished first or second on our fucking PT test for 10 straight fucking years. And then the one PT test we did, I remember falling behind and people were passing me. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't fucking care. I don't care.
That's
That's what I
exactly.
think. Like, damn.
Yeah, it's crazy you say that, because that's the moment I knew I was done with professional CrossFit. The
Yeah.
moment there was some stuff that was going on, I was dealing with personally, mentally, and some shit happened. I couldn't be all there. I wasn't all there when I was training, and every single competition I ever done, I always placed first or second or in the top 3. And I was competing with dudes that I had been smoking all fucking year. Like I was second or first overall. And it was the fittest cop in the world and fittest firefighter in the world. It was sponsored by CrossFit, and we got invited for part of the CrossFit Games to go and compete against one another and the Police and Fire Olympics. And I took last. I got fucked. I was just, I wasn't there, and I'd been practicing. I was destroying these fucking workouts, but I couldn't. And even when I knew I was training, I wasn't giving it all. And I was like, dude, this is probably the end. Yeah. And I already had that going in by the time I went in and I finished, and I was like, it was fun. I got to meet a lot of cool people. I got to compete with some of the fittest cops in the world. And I was like, cool, I'm fucking done. Like, I can't do this anymore. Exactly. Yep. Now we're going long, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question, and it's kind of a 2-parter, and I know the fans would probably want to hear it. Was there ever one crazy call out that you went to on SWAT that you were just like, holy fuck, and can you talk about it? And then the other part is there something, as we get ready to close out, is there something that you can tell other people that could help them? And I know you've been doing it all episode long, and you've been giving really good advice. Is there any advice you could give to new coppers coming on?
Yeah. So the craziest call I probably went on, the one that bothered me the most, it actually didn't end with like any crazy trauma, somebody blowing their head off or a bunch of bodies or something crazy. It ended with the suspect, who we thought was in the house, walking up behind us armed and touching one of us and saying, "Hey, I'm right here. I'm ready to turn myself in." That one fucked with me, because he could have fucking killed a bunch of us if he wanted to. So that call started with a wife calling in and saying, "Hey, my husband," who we had a lot of interactions with this fucking dude. You know, he was a sovereign citizen type. And just a really difficult dude to be around. Tons of guns, which I fucking love guns, you know, but it's always one of those things where like those two types of personality, or that type of personality with weapons, is like, okay, that's something that we need to keep an eye on, right? Mm-hmm. And so he gets into a fight. It turns into a DV thing with his wife. His mother-in-law tries to intervene, and he, you know, shoves her around, and he's been drinking and doing whatever drugs he's been doing. And he goes and he gets his gun, tells everybody to get the fuck out of the house. They all leave. And then as they're walking, he starts cracking off rounds, and they take off running into the woods, and he starts taking his rifle and he's following them as they're running through the woods. Now, do I think he was actually trying to shoot him? I don't know. I think maybe he was more trying to scare them. But he was definitely tracking them and making it to where they felt like they were being shot at, right? So we rolled up in our armor, and the mother-in-law said that, you know, because first, you know, patrol got called, they set up a perimeter, they did their thing. Then we get called, and, you know, SWAT, everybody thinks that SWAT is like, you know, you're there instantly and we're ready to go kick ass, but usually it takes a fucking hour to get everybody spun up, or more sometimes. Right. So by the time we get there, the scene's already locked down. And the information we got is he's in the house. He passed out on the couch. He has an AR-15 style rifle and a pistol with him, but he's passed out on the couch. Mother-in-law says she saw him, you know, he's asleep. I guess she went back into the house at some point. So we're like, okay, cool. So we set up our perimeter. We start calling him out, all that shit. And after hours and hours of calling this dude out, we're like, okay, he's not coming out. So we're going to have to go in and get him. So the team is getting ready to make entry into the house, and we're all sitting there, obviously looking in at the fucking house and our perimeter that we set up. And we hear footsteps, and one of our operators, and I don't, obviously it wasn't me, so I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I remember hearing him all of a sudden go, "Get the fuck on the ground." And so we all turn around.
Oh, dude.
This fucking dude came crawling out of the woods and just walked up to us to surrender. And none of us even fucking saw him because all the lights were shining in. Everybody was looking. It was in the middle of the night. Right.
Right.
And so we took him into custody and we were like, "Where's all your guns?" And he pointed us to a spot in the woods where he had been for like the last 3 hours, laying there with a scoped fucking rifle, watching us.
Wow.
And he could have fucking picked off every single one of us with his rifle. We had no idea he was in the woods. I guess when he went back into the house, he went out the back door and he got through patrol's perimeter and disappeared into the woods before we even got there. So the whole fucking time we set up on the house, he wasn't even in there.
Right.
And that was one that really stuck with me because I was like, that dude could have fucking killed us all. And
absolutely.
the only reason we are still alive is because he got tired of laying out there and getting eaten alive by bugs. And he decided he didn't want to kill a cop today because he absolutely could have. And that was like a fucking wake up call for me. That like, you got to have your head screwed on. Cause that could have gone way worse, you know? Yeah. So that was a big one that stuck with me because it was not what actually happened, but like what could have happened, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I totally get that. That's crazy. Like you could have died.
Oh, for sure.
Over and over again.
Like, yeah. I mean, a lot of us could have. And we're on his property, so he would have fucking smoked a bunch of us and then disappeared into the woods and his acreage that he owns, and it would have taken. I mean, who are you going to call once SWAT gets fucked up? You know what I mean? Like
the feds at this point,
another SWAT team, or the feds. So yeah, it was just a crazy situation. So, wow. And then the only other story worth telling really quickly was an entry that I was on, and at the time I was the shield operator, and our ballistic shields have that glass panel, right? So that I can hold it and I can see and I can still have my gun out and do my thing. We made entry, and there's 2 steps that went up into this guy's living room, and he came out of his bathroom wrapped in a towel. So we were giving him commands, right? It was a no-knock warrant, so we made entry, and we didn't start giving commands till we were already inside. And he turns around, and we tell him to put his hands up. He puts one hand up, right? But the other hand, he's holding on to his fucking towel because he doesn't want to drop his towel.
Right.
And he's kind of a fat bastard, you know? So he's like, the towel's barely covering him anyway. And so we're like, "Hey, dude, you need to put your other hand up," because he had a bunch of fucking guns in the house. And he was like, if I put my hand up, I'm gonna drop my towel. And we were like, "That's fine. Just put your hand up.
We don't care.
We don't care." So he puts his hand up, drops his towel, bare ass, right? And I'm the first one in the stack. So I'm directing him backwards. And I'm at the bottom of these 2 steps, right? So he's backing up. So he's higher than I am. And so he is ass to face level with me, right? So I start backing him up, and then I tell him to stop. And this motherfucker doesn't stop. And I'm like, stop. That dude backed his ass all the way up and pressed his fucking cheeks against my glass port. And I was sitting there fucking there were just 2 hairy ass cheeks pressed against this port. And I told him I ended up holstering up because my buddies had lethal cover on him, and I fucking pushed him away from my shield, and the glass had 2 sweaty ass prints on the front of it. And I will never forget that because somebody else had to take over the verbal commands because I was starting to fucking laugh because I was like, this dude just fucking put an ass print on my shield. So that one stuck with me too for another reason.
Yeah, that's hilarious, man. I mean, that's funny. That reminds me of the time I was proning some people out at 7-Eleven, and I had less than lethal, and I had a beanbag, and it was a stolen vehicle, and so we're proning everyone out in the car, and this one dude is getting all crazy, and I told him, I was like, hey, dude, I got a fucking beanbag, and your ass is right in front of my face. I was like, if you keep fucking around, I'm sending one up your fucking rectum, and like I'm gonna shoot your butthole. And I had people starting to laugh they're like, oh my God, did you just tell him you're going to shoot a beanbag into his asshole? I was like, 100%, dude. 100%. I was like, I will send one into your rectum. Like, I will go inside of you. And my sergeant was like, he was like, Chuck, shut the fuck up. And I was like, what? I was like, I'm telling him what's going to happen. This is the best angle I have. And that's where that round's going to go. It's going to go in his butthole. Like, and he's like, you shut the fuck up. And you can't say he's actually.
You just threatened to sexually assault him with a beanbag round.
Fucking sodomize him with a sock round. The funny thing is though, that supervisor listens to the show. He's a good friend of mine.
Oh, and, right on.
Yeah. So I just thought it was funny, but those are some of the times they are the best. But as we're getting ready to close out, is there one thing that you can tell people who are getting ready to come on the job or coppers who are fresh on the job that could help them?
Yeah. Don't discount your potential. And the reason I say that is because it's very easy for a new officer to come on the job and see all these veteran dudes who look like, we were talking about this earlier, look like they know everything, right?
Right.
And it's very easy to then assume that like you'll struggle to get to that level, right? And so for a lot of guys, that prevents them from pursuing the things they really want to do. And so one thing I always tell our new academy recruits is put in for everything that you want to do, regardless of who's putting in for it, who has more experience, who has more tenure. Put in for it anyway, because worst case scenario is they say no, right? But it's a no anyway, even if you don't try. So worst case scenario is they say no, but they know your name now.
Yep.
And you know what the process is when you apply for things and you get a chance to get an interview, you get in front of people, you get, you meet all the right people, right? And if you're afraid of, like, if you're the dude that's like, oh man, if I throw my name in the hat, everybody's just gonna fucking make fun of me because they're gonna be like, you're the fucking new guy. Why are you trying? Yeah. And if that's the mindset that you have, you're never going to get practice at the process. And it's important to get that practice. You know what I mean? So that's probably one of the most important practical tips that I can give is like, don't let other people dictate what how you feel about your own potential. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah.
I think that's great fucking advice. And I wish I would have told that when I came on, because I had more of the old school mentality where, hey, you're going to do 5-10 years in patrol and then you move out and then you start doing other things. I should have started putting in for shit left and right because that's what a lot of other people are doing and they were getting picked up. You're right. They know your name now. Then that's the biggest thing is they know your name. They know that you're hungry. They know that you're trying to get on as fast as you can and they like the tenacity. And I think that is some of the best advice I think I've heard so far. Awesome. So at the end of every show, we give the guest a chance to dedicate the episode. I know you don't have a dedication, but I do. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. And this is Samuel Riveros. Police officer Sam Riveros was shot and killed while responding to reports of gunfire at the 4200 block of Philhurst Avenue in Baldwin Park. At 7:12 p.m., when two officers arrived on the scene, they found one man unresponsive with a gunshot wound before they were met with gunfire. During the shootout, one of the officers was injured after bullets hit his patrol vehicle. Officer Riveros also responded to the shooting call to assist the officers. He ran into the hail of bullets, preventing the shooter from targeting the officers and other community members in the neighborhood. Officer Riveros was transported to Los Angeles County USC Medical Center, where he was pronounced deceased. Investigators recovered a rifle and 60 spent shell casings at the scene. The man found unresponsive was shot and killed over a parking dispute. The suspect was struck with non-lethal life-threatening wounds. He was charged with 2 counts of murder with special circumstances, 2 counts of attempted murder, and charged for possessing an assault weapon. Officer Riveros had served at the Baldwin Park Police Department for 9 years. He is survived by his wife and children. He was 35. He had a 9-year and 6-month tour. His badge number 4422. Rest easy, brother. We've got it from here. Fuck, that was close to my house too. Like that's about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. But I worked right next to him and Olympic Division, and we would constantly use USCMC as our hospital where he was transported to. And I have some friends from that agency who I used to work undercover with for CrossFit Games. So when I heard that, I was like, damn, dude, like how many times have I been to a scene like that? How many times have we had that call and we get there and everything's code 4, the guy put his gun down, and then you get there and you take him into custody and everything. You know, and this dude just like saving officers and he gets shot, and it sucks that we have to keep doing this stuff, but we're going to continue to do it until there are no other officers to talk about. But if that day comes, it'll be a godsend, but the chances are that that'll never happen. Yep. So rest easy, brother. We've got it from here. As we get ready to close out, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for coming back for part 2. And honestly, we got into some conversations that we haven't had on this podcast in a really long time. And it kind of got back to the roots of everything and, you know, speaking our mind and talking about things that are happening to us and the real shit of law enforcement. Yep. And the real, you know, nitty gritty and things that help with self-preservation and survival in law enforcement. I think what we talked about today is going to help some people, a lot of people, and it's getting back to really the war stories roots. And I really enjoyed today's conversation. And I think that a lot of good info has been put out and a lot of really good, because I'm really a big advocate for mental health, officer survivability, and what's the other one? Just overall resiliency with officers. Yes. And I think we talked about a lot of really good stuff, and I think that it was amazing. So thank you so much for coming on. If you have anything going on, please let everybody know. And if you don't, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you know, we talked a little bit about my business, and I think in the last episode, you know, so Guardian Training Solutions, we have created both online and in-person classes to bring to law enforcement that are really no bullshit, hands-on stress inoculation type tactical courses. And so check out guardiantrainingsolutions.com. Look at the courses we're offering. We are actually in the process of trying to expand outside of the Kansas City metro area. So if there is anybody out there who is an incredibly talented instructor, or an agency that would like to potentially partner up to host a bunch of classes next year, holler at us, regardless of where you're at in the country, because we're trying to expand. And so guardiantrainingsolutions.com, you know, we're offering all kinds of different classes, and I'm really just trying to improve, you know, like you said, officer survivability, on the tactical side of things with officer skill sets. So check that out. Come train with us. If you're in the Midwest, come to some of our classes in the Kansas City, Missouri area. And if you want to host, or if you want to come on as a trainer, reach out to me, and I'd love to have a conversation with you.
That's awesome. And that's guardiantrainingsolutions.com, correct?
Yep.
So go check all that out. And I know we have some chiefs of police that listen to this. If you are a chief, or you are a dep chief, or a captain, or anything like that, high up in your agency, and you're thinking about guardiantrainingsolutions.com for your officers, I think you'd be remiss if you didn't talk to them, or didn't just at least get some info on it, because it could change your officer's life and actually help out your community members and making them safer. And for sure, all around a good thing. So,
and for the brass out there, we're putting on a leadership certification course right now.
Hell yeah!
With several former sheriffs and former chiefs of police who have the type of mindset where they're servant leaders, and they are there to provide resources to their people and motivate their people, right? And lead in a way that creates morale and brings up the next generation of officer to be hard chargers and go-getters. And so check that out. That's on the website too. The leadership certification course is going to be a blast. It's partially online. It's a hybrid course. It's partially online. And then there's also an in-person component where we're all going to get together and do some tabletop stuff. And then I'll probably take everybody out for drinks. So check it out on the website.
That's fucking awesome, dude. That's cool. So Chiefs of Police, you would be remiss if you did not sign up for this, or captains or any type of brass or leadership.
Yes,
so thank you, Kevin, so much for coming on today. Thank you all today for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on Instagram at war_stories_official and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. If you already follow us, we'd really appreciate if you could share our post and help spread the word. You can also check out the link on both platforms in our bio to find all of our social media, our media links, website, and our podcast. Our podcast is available on all major streaming platforms, including YouTube. If you'd like to support us, head over to our website at www.warstoriesofficial.com. Grab some merch. Do you have a story to tell, or do you know someone who does? We're really looking for law enforcement, veterans, corrections officers, dispatchers, firefighters, medics, ER docs, and ER nurses to feature on the show. If you're interested, email us, if you're interested, go to linkedin.com/War Stories Podcast and talk to our producer Dylan there. You can also email us at booking.warstories@gmail.com. But if you go, Dylan's on top of it. If you go to LinkedIn, that's the best way to get a hold of him. If you don't have a LinkedIn, create a LinkedIn. It's a great social media platform. It's for professionals, and it's great. And you can hook up with other cops and see what's going on in that type of world, and maybe even get a job offer. You never know. So go there. And also check us out on TikTok. Our TikTok is www.tiktok.com/War Stories Locker Room. Thank you for the support, and stay safe out there. Until our next episode, come home with your shield. We're on it.